Brooke, good morning. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I was listening to your podcast, man. You guys go right at it. I mean, it's like
Oh,
real deal stuff. You go right to the point. It's very vulnerable, but it's also like super authentic. What you're so famous. Did you have some urge to just put it all out there finally?
it's funny. When you've been around this long, you sort of find that there are only certain areas in which you really get to be authentically yourself and heard, and that's in writing a book, or doing something that is relatively live, like a podcast. I never really set out to do a podcast, but now what came to my mind one day, and I said, everybody that you think or that you have an expectation about or a preconception, they've all had these now what moments, and I thought, I think people know that I'm not going to try to catch them in something, but I'm vulnerable enough so that they feel safe. I mean, it's an odd thing. I'm having so much fun with it. I'm getting better at it. I was a little not very journalistic in the beginning. I basically, having been on the other side for so many decades, I would find myself giving them permission not to answer any of the questions. And then I got better at it.
Have you found yourself sharing a story and then going, "Oh man, did I just share too much?" Like having to actually question, and then you allowed it to exist, but then you were happy you did. What would be an example of that where you were like, "Ooh, I'm really putting it out there"?
Uh, I think, really just airing insecurities in a way that is not polished. I will say a book, you can sort of, you can work with words and you can sort of get what you want out, but you're still sort of hiding behind a book. And I think just admitting to being scared at times and really insecure, and falling into the traps that other women over 40, I'm 57, but feel. And as you're saying it, you think, oh God, am I going to sound like I'm whining or poor me? And then you listen to it and you're like, no, it's just I am a woman like many other women, and we all go through things. So it's scary at first, but then when you hear it, you think, I've been really honest.
How are you getting? Well, I mean, I know the answer probably because you're just cool and have a lot of cool friends. But you're getting a lot of A plus list guests. Do you have to lure them in? Like, come on, guys, trust me, it's a lot of fun. Or are they just pretty willing to hop in as well?
I think they're pretty willing to hop in. I mean, a lot of it is, around don't want to do it unless they're promoting something, which I totally understand. Or if it's too close around a certain incident that is so fraught in people's minds, they're a bit hesitant. But nobody has said anything is off limits. And there have been people that have been that are very clear in how they want to answer the question before the question even gets asked. And there are some that are, just very skilled at not answering the question. And even those people have at the end said, wow, you kind of got that out of me, but it didn't feel mean, or it didn't feel like an I gotcha moment, or it didn't feel like a pulled out headline that's the soundbite that we're going to just base the whole interview on.
I did see a clip that again was a soundbite because again you talk about so much, but I saw there was one where you were talking about actors that you had dated, and it kind of became a big story. Do you know sometimes when you're telling these stories that it's probably going to be picked up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I joke with my publicist because I'll say under my breath, I'll say soundbite, or that's the headline, and it becomes just a game because it just seems so reductive and typical, and you know what I mean? It's like everybody's desperate for the soundbite and the one line. This has started since I was a virgin, and that became everybody's main focus, which is ridiculous on many levels. So I've been dealing with this for a few decades now.
Do you feel like you had at all a normal childhood?
I've been asked that question forever, and I don't know what normal is. Conventional, no. When other kids were playing soccer or whatever the sports were, I was going to photo studios at Avedon's and Scavullo, and I was earning a living. So it's not conventional, but my mom never let me go to professional children's school. And I never lived in Los Angeles until until I was doing a television show. And so there was this work life and then real life. And real life was with my mom and then with my dad in separate families and regular school. So for until I was 20, in my 20s, well, 21, I was in a regular school schedule. And that was about as normal and as normally pressured as it can be. My vacations were not conventional and my extracurricular activities were not. But my mom always made the production send a girlfriend with me or send my sister with me. And so I always had this sort of grounding of a 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old. I wasn't always surrounded by adults. So the two of us could sort of get together and giggle about how crazy we thought adults were. So to me, I think it's actually pretty normal, almost more normal than some of my normal friends.
Do you, what I find super impressive about you is that you went to Princeton. I mean, do you find people are often shocked at that fact?
Always. They were shocked the day I got in, and then the whole kind of campaign started with, why did she get in? Did she just get in because she was famous? And then when I get to school, all the teachers wanted to make sure that they weren't giving me any extra attention. So they graded me harder, and they were less, they just, because they had something to prove as well. And then over time, just my work ethic was so intact. What was strange was coming out of college, my freshman year, and having a press conference, because they thought, if you do a press conference about what it's like, what your real life is like, they'll leave you alone. And the press were shocked by a level of maturity that they hadn't seen in me prior. I wasn't looking to anybody for my answers anymore. I wasn't worrying that an answer wasn't going to be okay. And I was using bigger words, because here I am at Princeton thinking I better use bigger words. And I don't think they liked it. They didn't like non-malleable Brooke.
The Suddenly Susan was a show I watch all the time. Loved it. A lot of these shows are coming back, reboot form. Have they come to you and said, let's do Suddenly Susan again?
If they did, I'd probably say yes without even them getting the question out. But I don't think that we were ever, first of all, they canceled us at 98. So we never.
Wow.
It was all a nice little plan that they had intact, which I didn't know about, which I will say I've got a little bitterness, or maybe a lot of bitterness about that, but not from a syndication financial standpoint, just from, how wonderful it was to do that show. I mean, we just were so happy. And then tragedy befell the show, and we lost one of our cast members, and it kind of was never the same again. And I think Warner Brothers or NBC would probably argue we were never a big enough hit to merit a reboot. When now shows get picked up for 8 or 9, we never had a season that was fewer than 23, 22, 26, so in these days, that would be a huge hit. And then back then, we didn't get to 100. So they sort of checked us off.
I can't believe they got it to 98 purposefully.
I
mean, that's almost mean. I mean, that's mean.
Well, I think it's a financial thing. I mean, all these things end up being financial. We think they're personal because we're living in it day in and day out, and we're performing in front of a live audience, and we're having to think on our feet, and we're getting new scripts every day. So we're so in it. And then you realize, it's just a money game. After a certain number, this entity doesn't pay for a production anymore. It switches over to this entity. And they may or may not want to do that. So it's the same thing that happened suddenly. Lipstick Jungle. We were number one for a while, and then TiVo came into existence, and practically overnight, all of our advertisers pulled out because people were fast forwarding through the commercials. So it didn't even matter how much people loved us, watching us. They wanted to fast forward through the commercials, and therefore all that money practically overnight gets now they found ways around it, but we were right on the sort of precipice of TiVo. So that was sort of, that happened too. So these things, you'd think they're mean only because they feel personal. And the older I get, the less personal I realize it all is.
How do you do with
Even
scripts?
if they say they love you.
You're
Excuse me?
you're super super smart. How do you deal with scripts? Can you memorize them quickly? Do you have to do it over and over again? But with so many roles, how are you?
So I have about 12 pages to do tomorrow for this
Oh, there they
project
are.
that I'm doing. And I have not started to memorizing.
But you can do all 12 in a night?
Yeah, I can. I have this, it's you have to put yourself in a position where you can still listen, and that's the trick, so that you're not just reciting words. But I memorize things based on where they are on the page. So when I think about where a page is, I have it highlighted. I'm such a geek about, I mean, I highlight and I note and I make red notes, and my husband says you're such a dork. But yeah, I don't, I'm trained to have to think quickly. A lot of the time when you do these commercials, before they had teleprompters and before they had, and back in my day, or in the day, I still feel like it's my day, but you didn't have teleprompters. You had to memorize everything. And so I think I just got trained.
Brooke Shields is on with us, and I encourage you guys to check out her podcast, Now What, with Brooke Shields. It is a very authentic, very vulnerable. It's an original podcast that examines pivotal moments in people's lives. Again, it's very honest. It's a great podcast. And then also,
thank you. Coming from you, that's a big deal. I mean, I'm coming into a world I've never been in, and it's been very well received, and I thank you. And I didn't think people would really want to hear me anymore in my life, and people do seem to want to be interested in hearing my guests.
Well, I hope people check it out. And then there's also Holiday Harmony coming out on HBO Max. And so when a movie like that comes to you, and we have a special interest here with that movie, because if you put the camera on Amy for 1 second, Amy has like 5 lines or so in the movie.
Yes, she does.
And you see her in the trailer. I mean,
she looks so beautiful in the trailer. Yeah, too. I didn't get to meet you.
Oh, I know. I was there the last day of filming, so you were already done with your scenes, and I was definitely excited to possibly see you. So to see you now is fun.
So
I was way up with the alpaca farmers and up in Northern Cal. They didn't bring me to Hollywood.
How does like a Christmas movie, because it's been Amy's dream forever to do like a holiday movie, and now they're super cool again. And how does a Christmas movie come to you? Do you go, I'd like to do a holiday movie because they are so cool now? Or do they go, Brooke, we got this perfect idea. It's a really good movie for the holidays?
For a while, holiday movies were sort of taboo. They were sort of, oh, you're doing a Hollywood movie? That means like it's not, I mean, you're doing a Christmas movie or a holiday movie. That means that you're not doing real edgy stuff. Well, first of all, I've never really been edgy in that way. They come to me and I'm prepared to not like them because they're pretty formulaic. And then every now and then one will come up, or two now, and I just did my second one, but that will touch a chord and be an escape. And I think that's what I love about them, is especially if they're directed well, and if they have enough of a story that does deviate from just the regular holiday Christmas formula movie. And I mean, I read a lot of them, and I don't say yes to most of them. I did one last year for Netflix, which was extraordinarily popular, and it was so much fun to do. And it was called Castle for Christmas. And these movies come out again. It's funny because they bring them back out again for the next holiday. And you're sort of like, oh, I just think for me, rom-coms, holiday movies, they're based in joy. You sort of know how they're going to turn out, but you still want to be on the journey with it. And just looking at the news and just being in the world, it's just so hard these days that these kind of movies are a wonderful escape.
I would compare holiday movies now to game shows, where for a long time I wouldn't take a game show because I was like, game shows are hokey, and if I ever do and host a game show, then I'm always going to be a game show host. However, but now they're really cool again. I think Steve Harvey kind of brought that back, where you could be a real talent and be funny, and then everybody's doing game shows, and now everybody wants to do a game show. I think those two kind of run alongside each other. I think you made a great point there. For a long time, it was like, we don't want to do that, but now, like, you almost want to host a game show or a holiday movie.
Well, it's funny because everything is, everybody, there was a time when, you would never be a TV actress. Oh God, no, and then Helen Hunt comes and does, Mad About You. And I was obsessed with it. And I was like, wait a minute, she can do it. I can do that. And prior to then, you wouldn't touch TV, and then there are all these sort of taboos that come around. And I think slowly but surely the joy that is in all of these emerges, and I don't think there's anything off limits anymore. I think the crossover is, amazing. Look at what Julia Roberts and Clooney just did a rom-com sort of movie like that. And we just flocked to it because it opens up your heart a little bit, and it's escapism.
Well, Brooke, we're big fans, and I hope everybody checks out Now What with Brooke Shields. It's a wonderful podcast, and I hope they check out Brooke and her co-star Amy. Yeah. Yes. Holiday Harmony on HBO Max that is out November 24th, which is Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving Day. And I was told by Lauren Swickard, who's one of the writers and producers, that I guess I technically am a supporting role. Oh. That's my
Oscar. Then you're not competing against Brooke, and you both can win an Oscar.
And for supporting actress.
Yes. Brooke, big fan. Thank you very much. Good luck with the podcast, and we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you. Appreciate yours. Hope to see you in person one day.
All right. Bye.
It's a Bobby Bones Show.